Welcome to the Climbing the Charts podcast. I'm Angie Lawless. We're excited to share something a little different with you today. It's a special series that we're calling the Spirit of Bipartisanship. Over the next several episodes, we will bring you leaders from across the political spectrum discussing what it really means to work together, find common ground, and move our communities forward. Just a quick note, when we recorded these conversations, we weren't originally planning to release them as podcast episodes. So the audio quality may not be quite what you're used to, but we felt these discussions were too important not to share. We hope you enjoy these insightful, real, and sometimes challenging conversations. Let's get started. Introduce everybody in the room. Chairman John Ray Clemmons, District 55, part of Davidson County. Representative Ron Travis, District 31. Bledsoe Ray
Sequatchie in Van Buren.
I like that, Sequatchie. And then Representative Todd Warner, District 92, Marshall, and part of Williamson counties. Each of you guys are sort of an ideal participant for us, someone who's willing to share experiences, ask questions, and come to the table with curiosity. The goal of tonight's not to change your mind, but just to allow you to share and hear different perspectives. It's not an opportunity to challenge or question each other's experiences or beliefs, but rather to cultivate an understanding where we might meet to better Tennesseans. So I'm going to ask that everybody give me a one-word barometer. So you just say like how you're feeling right now. So
I'm mellow. I'm just relaxed. I mean, I'm in good company.
Yeah.
I mean, with Todd, John, Ray, you guys. I mean, I feel good about it. I mean, it's, because this guy's on the other side of the seat. But, I mean, one of the most intelligent people that I know John Ray is. He's very, very cool, sometimes undercover. But he's good. And Todd, I've known Todd for 2 years now. We work together. And Angie, you are a member of the Insurers of Tennessee.
I know.
And you did not know that I was your CEO, for crying out loud.
I'm going to be sitting up there learning some things. For sure.
And Brandon, you're a trustee of all this stuff. That's pretty cool.
Brandon's going to be getting to know you a lot. He loves insurance.
Oh, I'm telling you. It's what you said.
Right.
But yeah, I'm good. I'm mellow. I'm feeling good.
How about you, Todd?
Awesome. Great.
John, how are you feeling?
This is going to sound odd, but optimistic.
Oh, and I just feel happy.
I think interested. I think I'm very
interested. That's a great one. What is one fun fact that no one in this group knows about you?
In this group, I'd say nobody probably knows that I grew up on a farm and probably spent more time in an old John Deere tractor than I ever have in a car.
Wow, that is pretty good. That is pretty good. So I'll lead off with that one. We own a farm. And I don't have a John Deere. I have a Ford, but I used to have a Mazda.
We had a
Ford.
1956 Ford that I rode a lot.
Oh, I tell you what, the one I have now, it's new, it's air conditioned and all that stuff. But the Massey that I used to have was like a 70, and man, it would stay on track. It was probably one of the good. We have horses now. We have 2 at the farm. We had 4, and they're getting older. We had cattle, and I kept getting a phone call when I was in Nashville to say, "Hey, your cows are in your pool," and I'm going, "Oh." So I ended up having to sell my cows. But I love the farm life. I love the rural area. I mean, you grow up, you probably did a lot of work, and you probably hate it. That's why you're in Nashville.
Sent me right to law school. No, I love it.
How about you, Todd?
I'll back these guys up. I grew up on a dairy farm, but one thing I will say that I'm kind of not proud of, but as a young lad out in the country looking for fun at Halloween, we always, threw a few eggs.
Oh man, you're the egg thrower.
Were they from your own chickens?
They was. They sit out a week in the sun, if there was any warm weather left in October, and got a little rotten, and
Did your daddy spank you for throwing all the eggs?
Absolutely.
Brandon, I feel like you've got a lot of animal stories.
Yeah, same thing too. I grew up in kind of Bradley County.
County,
just outside the city limits of Cleveland, Tennessee.
That's it.
I had 2 neighbors. One had horses and cows, and our family had a lot of chickens, and we had a lot of animals. My brother had a Burmese python.
That's not an animal. That's just dangerous.
Yeah, it was dangerous. We had to get away when it started breaking out of the cage.
First of all, you had like a pet skunk,
we had a
pet
lot
squirrel,
of pets. We had an iguana. We had a lot of pets.
Oh my goodness.
We had an owl at one point. But a lot of early life was like, our main form of entertainment was letting all the chickens out and then trying to catch them. That'd usually take about 2 hours.
Yeah, that I'm
And
not
it was
good
really
with
bad
that.
because then they don't lay eggs for a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I spent a lot of time doing that though.
I half grew up on a farm because my mom was when she was gone, like she traveled for business and stuff, so I'd stay with her parents, and they had a cattle farm and a tobacco farm, and so I can set tobacco. I can't do anything else.
Oh wow! Wow.
But I mean, I
Done
feel
my share of that.
confident that
Yeah,
the
me too.
setters
Yeah.
are better
That's a tough one.
today than they were then. So I'd probably be better at it today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for indulging me on that. So, Johnny, tell us about this bill, free school breakfast and lunches.
Yeah, so I've introduced this bill a few times, and it usually hits a roadblock in the budget committee, unfortunately. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how I came to this bill. And the first few years, I came up on this issue. I experienced this. We can talk about this more later, but I experienced this in my classmates when I was growing up. Both my elementary school and kindergarten were both in the middle of the housing authority developments in Wilson County, and so I saw firsthand what it looked like for most of my classmates not to have food security. And food security is a real thing. And so I started reading an article one time, I can't remember what it was, about my first term in the office, and it was about lunch shaming. And so what was happening across the country, and unfortunately in Tennessee in a couple of districts, is these kids who didn't qualify for free and reduced lunch would incur this meal debt. And so they were getting punished for it. And so one school was writing the kid's meal debt on his hand in permanent marker so that when he went home, his parents would see it. And no, one school system was, the kids would have to eat the lunch in the principal's office, and they had to eat like, I don't know, I love bologna, but, just a bologna sandwich or something like that, but not the school meal, alone in the principal's office as punishment. And that's called lunch shaming. And so, of course, there's a stigma attached with that. If y'all remember what it was like to be that kid, these kids get bullied, they get whatever. And the fact is, they're just probably poor in most cases, don't qualify, or their parents didn't apply for free and reduced lunch, and they're being punished for it. And it's not the kid's fault. So I pushed this anti-lunch shaming bill a few years, and it actually started to get a little momentum. But then I thought, well, it'd make a lot more sense just to have universal free school meals and not have to deal with this. And I did a lot of research on that and saw, what the food security issues were across the state and the childhood hunger in Tennessee. And there actually wasn't a big dollar sign attached to it because there's so much federal assistance from the USDA and Department of Education. They have these grant programs where a lot of school systems now already have free meals for every child. Davidson County is still eating free under a grant program that from the COVID program. So my kids
for both for breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, and so all this school meals are free. Is kids just have to take it, but not every school system does that. But that's every school system has that opportunity to take up these grants, and then anything that the federal government didn't cover, the state could pick up the tab just to make sure all kids are on a level playing field and that we're not having to deal with meal debt, because these schools are hiring debt collectors. They're spending money to do this stuff, and these kids are still being punished. And I thought, well, if everybody's got a free school meal, that would solve a lot of these problems. And not to mention the fact that, look, we've been giving free textbooks in Tennessee to every child in school since 1956. Governor Frank Clement passed free textbooks to every school. 1956, and here it's a pretty shocking data point, and it's one of those things where I thought it'd be a great idea for this bipartisan conversation, because we can all disagree on what's the best thing for how to reform education and public education and so forth, so on. But one thing we can agree on is A, we don't want kids to be hungry, and B, we want to improve educational outcomes for our children. And one of the guaranteed ways to do that is to make sure kids aren't hungry. Yeah. And so I've got all kinds of statistics and so forth and that support this argument. And we can go into those a little bit more, but that's really how I came to it. I just thought it was one of those things that would be worth the state's money to invest in children, because we all know they're coming into school with all kinds of problems, we're expecting teachers to deal with everything under the sun that happens out in that community that comes in that schoolhouse. We can't address all those problems. That's just not realistic. We can't expect our public schools to do that. But if we can feed them while they're there, that checks a bunch of boxes. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I came to this piece of legislation.
Now I think it's just about you guys asking questions about his experience, anything that you don't understand surrounding the bill, any questions that you have, though.
Well, the thing about it is, when you texted me John Ray's bill today, I did some studying and I did some internet search, and what he says is correct. I mean, a child will learn more if he is fed. If he is fed. So this morning I got up and I asked my children about my grandchildren, and I said, do you guys pay for your lunch? I mean, do they pay? And they said, yeah, we pay about $2.75 a day that we pay for our lunch. And I said, well, has it always been like that with the school system? And he said, no, when the pandemic was in, we didn't have to pay for lunches and do that. And so, I think John Ray's got a great idea, and his passion is unbelievable for the bills that he does, because, like I said, he's a very intelligent guy, and I sit there and listen to him on the House floor.
He's setting you up.
Yeah, John Ray.
Here comes that.
But and the thing about it is, he's very knowledgeable of what he does and all that. The thing that I see in the bill today is what he said a while ago. He said they put a fiscal note on this that was very huge, wasn't it? John Ray's probably wasn't it $700 million or something like that?
Yeah, the original one. Yeah,
the original
it
one
came down considerable after they actually looked at the federal.
What is
programs.
it now? Do you know what? I mean, of course, now let's go back to the federal programs and what we talked about a while ago, the USDA. There's a school in Dayton City School. I called some schools today. In Dayton City School, the poverty level of students there are a larger percent, which means when they're a larger percent, the USDA has a program that they will pay for all the schools. So all the schools in this school system in Dayton eat free because they qualify, because rural districts, unlike probably Nashville, the money is probably not there, so it qualifies for something like this. So, going back to what John Ray was talking about, to make this possible, and I don't sit on an education committee. I do not sit on an education committee, so I'm thinking outside the box with our peers. Is what John Ray's going to face in all this is probably that fiscal note that's been put on this bill, and like I said, it's quite large. So if we can find out a way that it's possible that if we do something like this and go down this path, there's applications that people have to fill out that says, hey, what's your income? What's this? So we got to make sure that we get that USDA money that comes in before the state pays their money out, and reduce that fiscal note on that, because right now you look at education right now in our state is $14.8 billion a year.
And I think the bill actually sort of
it does, but we got to make sure that
we're getting as much.
Because what's going to happen is, if you have a child that's in school and the parents are not making the money, will they fill out that form? Will they fill out that form to send back into the school so the schools can send it in to get that qualified money for that? That's the only thing that probably scares me. Is
and then you got to worry about a little. Don't mean to interrupt, but worry about fraud and stuff like that taking place. On those applications. But
before we get into just open discussion on it, do you guys have any other just sort of qualifying questions to ask about it, or do you feel?
No, I feel comfortable with the bill. He ran it last year, and then I think we had a Republican. Didn't we run it 2 years ago?
Yeah, they ran my bill.
Oh, did he run it?
Well,
there you go.
That's why I say it's bipartisan.
Yeah. What a world.
But I do want to note here. I mean, if they don't have a qualitative question, I think it's interesting, though, to just talk about some of the statistics that are at play. And I think fiscal notes are always a very worthwhile topic, and they're obviously a focus of all of ours. Everybody here is fiscally responsible and wants to spend taxpayers' money appropriately. And then it just becomes a question of what are the priorities for spending. And just looking at the data, so 11.5% of Tennessee households are unable to provide adequate food for one or more household members due to lack of resources today under the most current data. In Tennessee, 984,430 people are facing hunger. 274,320 of those are children in Tennessee in 2024. This means that 17.9% of children in Tennessee face food insecurity. Now, the catch here is 25% of those are ineligible for federal nutrition programs because their family may make just above that threshold, even if they apply. And that threshold, if you're below 130% of the income poverty level, you qualify for free meal if you fill out the paperwork and so forth. If you're between 130 and 185%, you get reduced cost meals at school today. But when you talk about what's 130% of the poverty level is about $33,576 today. Mm-hmm. So if your parents make $34,000, and this is for a family of three, so you have one, you could have a single mother with two kids, or you could have two parents with one kid. I'm just using a family of three as an example. You could make $34,000 and not qualify for free lunch, or you could make $48,000 and not qualify for reduced. And so that's when you look at this average cost of living in Tennessee is $43,000, give or take a few, depending on your county. But that's the state average. I mean, that's a really big struggle for these families. And when you look at that paired with the impact it has on educational performance and that child's likelihood of success in the future, you're almost creating an environment where that child's hungry, he's come to school, can't perform. How's he going to get out of that poverty? How's he going to get out of that and be able to perform to see a brighter future? And when you look at the fact, and this isn't, and don't think this is a rural versus urban thing, because in Davidson County, the issue is, in Davidson County, 19.8% of children have food insecurity. 28% of those are ineligible for federal programs.
Well, we just, under Imagine Nashville that just came out, we just learned that 47% of, it was a little unclear if it was people or households, make $50,000 or less in Davidson County, which I think is
that's
mind blowing.
Yeah.
Because the cost that you really need, I think around here to live is around 80 something thousand.
Yeah,
that's
in
where
reality.
you can, in reality, to meet all the ancillary needs. So this would provide free lunch for every student across the board, and free breakfast for every student across the board, regardless of where they are, without having to.
Because those federal programs would capture all those other students, and then after the school system is exhausted those federal resources, those left over. And so you got everybody on the same plane where you're not incurring meal debt. The school's not having to chase that down, and administrative, kids aren't being punished or stigmatized. And we're addressing one thing that we know that the data supports will improve educational outcomes. Now we can argue about more math or more ELA or whatever is going to improve that child, but we know hunger is one variable.
In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're definitely going to start with your basics, right?
It's a basic, and that's a variable that is undisputed. And so we rarely have the opportunity when we're talking about education reform to talk about a variable that is undisputed. Mm-hmm. And one is hunger and the impact it has on the educational performance. So that's the reason. But, look, down in Bledsoe County, 26.5% of students are food insecure. Williamson County, of course, is the lowest in the state with 3.5%, but Marshall County has 15.8%. So it's all over the board. Lake County, which our friend represents, is 35.3% of kids are food insecure. Now, so this isn't an urban versus rural. This is a statewide issue where we could really have a positive impact on these kids and their ability to perform and learn to give them a better possibility for a brighter future. The fiscal note, I think original was 700. I think it was million, but that came
Is
down
that
when
per
they
year?
actually
Per
factored
year?
out.
Is that a
When they factored out the federal, that number came way down. They had
Didn't it come out to 243,000 or something, or million or something like that?
and here, and this is where it becomes, okay, what are our state's priorities, right? So we could give this tax cut here, or we could spend money here, or we can invest in children and ensure educational outcomes. And that's probably where you're going to get more rub, is what the fiscal priorities are and budgetary standpoint, which is where it dead ends in budget every year. But I don't think anybody would disagree on the other stuff.
Is there a way, John Ray, that under Title I, because I'm not in education, so I'm
Right.
sort of just what I've learned today is what I've learned today, is under the Title I, what percentage, do you know what percentage of the children get free lunches in the state of Tennessee right now? Do we know that percentage? But I do think you have a great, I do think you have a great
it's
idea of
definitely
doing
a
that because
problem, but like you said, paying for it's going to be
the money is the big issue.
it's going to be an issue, and when it comes to feeding our children, it really shouldn't be an issue. But
The USDA, if we could figure out how the federal government give us more money, I mean, like 33,000, like you said, 44,000, like you said, to me, you're hungry. Yeah. You're hungry if you're making that much money, and you've got a house payment, you got a car payment, you got kids in school, you got, activities that you're coming through, your grocery bills are going up, and it's way too low. 33,000 is way too low. Then on the other side of that, if you make 65,000 and that child gets free lunches, are those kids going to harass him for getting free lunches if they know he's getting free lunches? So I mean, I can see everything good about free lunches. I really can see everything good about free lunches. And like I said, I'm not on education, so I'm not going to get to vote yes or no for you. If it comes to the House, it's a different story. So I just think that the uphill push on this thing is that number on the fiscal note. I think that's going to be your uphill push.
Well, Todd, are you going to get to stay on education?
I don't know, because our governor has chose to make education or education freedom the number one issue, and
so what is the price tag around that? So we talked about what the price tag is.
I don't even know it. The last time I think they were saying 144 million maybe to start, and a 5% increase in this bill, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't dug into it like I probably should have, but we don't know what committees the speaker sets the committees, and we don't know what committees we'll be on until we get back in session. But kind of on what John Ray's been hitting on, and I think the world of John Ray, very smart, intelligent man.
Do we get to talk
I'm gonna tell a little story here. But John Ray sometimes will bring a sack of biscuits in from McDonald's or Hardee's somewhere, and I kind of sit over with the Democrats, and a couple of them, he'll hand out those biscuits, and I can tell in the bottom of that sack every now and then there's one left in that sack. And I'll ask for that biscuit, but I've yet to been given,
John Ray, that doesn't sound like you.
But no, bouncing off kind of what John Ray said, and I appreciate his effort in this, and I get it. I do not want to see any kid go to school hungry, and statistics show that a hungry kid, does not learn. One thing we're just finished up the election, and one thing that I hope President Trump does is he demolishes the Federal Department of Education. He sends that money, the same amount of money, or maybe even a little more, back to the states, and let us, as the states, spend that money, and let's see how it works best for us. Let's send it back to the locals, and there was some extra money there for some extra students to get those free lunches. I'm all for it, because the last thing I want to see is a young kid go hungry, and they're not going to learn. But do I think we can fund the whole state? Breakfast and lunch. I think we have about a million kids in our public education system. I think it's going to be tough, but I'm willing to look at the numbers and see if we can come up with that money. Last year we gave 3 months free sales tax on groceries. I don't know what that's going to end up costing the state, but John Ray may know those numbers now. But there was 3 months that we give up to the state's part of the sales tax revenue to buy groceries, and I think that was a good thing, and I think it helped a lot of families. But sure, we can do more, and we just got to figure out ways to be able to do more.
What do you think? I come to this having no preconceived notions on it, but what are some other options if we do have? I mean, I think it's fairly undisputed that we do have children out there who are coming hungry. My problem with it is obviously like a child coming hungry is no good, but it's also a little bit unfair to not help give children the tools to rise above where their current station. And I think education is the way to do that. But if they're not fed, then it's this whole cycle, right? So what are some other options that we can get these kids that are kind of in this gap fed that you guys might see that would sort of fit within the budgetary constraints too?
Well, I think you need to do away with that 130% thing. I mean, like John Ray said, I mean, it's so low. I mean, golly bum, can you imagine raising a family of 3 on $33,000?
But that's federal,
and that's
right?
Health insurance and everything like that. That's the federal number, yeah.
So,
but in the state, we need to do something like that. The Katie Beckett that passed 3 or 4 years ago, they wanted to put a limit on that, and
will you tell me what that is?
No.
I don't.
Katie Beckett is disability children. I mean, if you have a disability, you grade a child for disability 0 to 20. And if that child's a 12, then you get some TennCare help. If your income is 130%, well, the Katie Beckett come out and said, look, we're not going to put a limit on this. There's not going to be 130%. If that child is 12 or above, we're going to give TennCare. It's just that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be. I'm when John Ray just said, every child should be fed. Everybody should have an unlimited thing. When I said let's raise the 130%, that's really not right, because that's going to leave out that person that makes $60,000 that's struggling with a house payment and a car payment and groceries and all that. They're still going to leave them in a bind because they're paying. They're taxpayers just like everybody else. So I mean, I hate to put a number on anything like that, a percentage on anything that does with our programs, because I think everybody's entitled. John Ray's entitled, Todd's entitled, you're entitled, Brandon's entitled. We're Tennessee, and when we said the bipartisan, when I agreed to come tonight, it's because I like this guy. I mean, and sometimes what he thinks and what I think, totally different, just because I represent a different area than he represents. It's not what me and him think personally. It's just that my district, Beth Harwell said it the best. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, you don't remember that. But she said, vote your district. Yeah. Don't vote your party, vote your district. Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to get to is to vote the district on what we need to do.
So in like in Bledsoe, those 26.5% of kids.
Yeah.
I mean, how can we reach those? It feels bad to not think about, and I know everybody here, that's why I really love this, is like I don't think it's about, oftentimes in Nashville when I turn on the news, it seems like it's, this party is bad. I don't see it that way, because when I sit down and I talk to people, I at least see that people have their own reasons for doing things, and that's what I think makes these conversations interesting. But I think if you've got, one county, over a quarter of your children who are food insecure, how do we help those children have a fighting chance? Because I don't know, I've never gone to school hungry.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Well, I haven't either.
Are there any private sources that are trying to address this problem? If the state fails and doesn't do it,
well, I mean, the state is failing and not doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now, all my children go to public school here in Nashville, and we've started, and others have started within the schools. And a lot of schools do this that have the means. Not all of them do. you start food pantries and backpack programs for the kids, so that the kids can go home with a backpack full of food for the weekend, or they can get whatever they need at the end of the day to take home. And that's all private donations, PTO and so forth. That's great. Churches, and we have one helps with our school down the street, and that's great. But that's not necessarily filling that whole bucket. And I think you just have to back up and look like, what's the fundamental roles of a government. I think public education, and our Constitution agrees, public education is one of them, funding education. And we can all agree that education's impacted by hunger. The kids are positively impacted when they're fed. They can learn more. I mean, the fact that this one statistic I found today, students who eat school breakfast score 17.5% higher on standardized math tests. I mean, that stat alone is just astounding. And so
I read that today too.
You can't.
It's like Head Start on steroids.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it is, but it's like one of those variables that So if we all step back and say, yes, we believe public education is important. We believe improving educational outcomes is important. One way we can do that, one small way we can guarantee help these students, is feed them. Okay, so then what's the best way to do that? It might be taking the caps off the income thresholds. It might be any number of things, seeking personal donations, which we already do. But at the end of the day, it's a dollar decision, right? And again, I can't emphasize enough, it's what are your priorities as a state, and are you going to prioritize budgetary? So I have to back up and say, look, last year we have a $400 million a year tax cut to a bunch of corporations. 53% are out of state. Now, you can argue whether that benefits us, how it benefits us, and what it does to the economy, and how that money trickles down, or whatever. You can make all kinds of arguments. But that's a budgetary priority decision. Giving away $1.9 billion that we legally didn't have to do. And again, you can have a legal argument about it, but we had alternatives to that didn't cost anything. Our state chose to do those things instead of things like feed children. Now, we can argue all day about the budgetary priorities, but that's a reality, and that's the reality in which we find ourselves today. So our state, fortunately, we've had great fiscal management. Governor Bredesen set us on the course that Governor Haslam and Governor Lee have kind of followed along, and we have money in the state of Tennessee to do things that can make a positive difference in people's lives, specifically children. So it's just a question of not if we have the money, it's a question of are we going to invest it here rather than there.
So I was going to...
Okay, I was just going to say, tell us about the Tennessee has a reserve, one of the few states that has a reserve. Mm-hmm. What does that look like?
A surplus?
Surplus. It's like a rainy day fund.
The rainy day fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
$2 billion.
Almost $2 billion right now.
Which, I mean, when we were talking to Commissioner McWhorter, though, when like I sat down and it sounds like a lot of money, but when we were talking about what the state needs, and when I started thinking about saving 2 months of like business expenses in a rainy day fund, it sounds like a big number, but it also is a big number to run the state of Tennessee. I don't know what I don't know, so I'm not saying that shouldn't be used, but what I am interested in is, I guess, what gives you faith to keep going down this path, knowing that you have hit the brick wall? Like, because what I hear here is agreement, but concern over the budget. And so if you think you're going to hit that wall again and you can't go over that, is there something else that could be done to help some of the food insecurity for a lesser price tag, or is this it?
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of reasons. I reintroduce legislation like this every year that I think is just, it checks a lot of boxes. It just makes sense. And it, again, it becomes a budget debate. But it also continues the debate, and it continues the conversation. And I think that's, look, I'm in a super minority. I don't control the state budget. I don't have any impact on the state budget. I don't get earmarks in the state budget. That's not my.
No?
I don't get that perk.
Governor Lee, did you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, if I did, maybe it would have passed. But what does happen is every year I introduce this in committee or whatever, or we just have things like this. It spurs a conversation, and it gets people thinking about it.
Yeah.
And somebody else might have a better idea than me.
Right.
And if they do, then great. Then I'll take that and adopt it. And so reintroducing legislation sometimes, now I don't think this should die, I introduce other bills that I know are going to die.
Right.
That, but they also spur conversation. And that's the important part about it. And that's what's so frustrating sometimes when I get up to present a bill, I don't even get a motion or a second, which we don't get to have the conversation. But I think the conversation itself is so important because it does provide me with good feedback, how to make the bill better, or maybe go down a different road. I mean, and my original bill was anti-lunch shaming.
Yeah.
And that detoured into this
Yeah.
because of the feedback I got from the committee, most of whom are across the aisle. And so I think there's a big value from a public discourse perspective, from a policy perspective, to continue to kind of push the ball up the hill and see what happens.
That's what this for me is all about, is that people leave this room and they think about those kids. So I'm on the board of CASA, and we can provide a CASA advocate for $2,000 for a child who's going through the system. The cost of that child per year to be in foster care is astronomical. I don't know the exact number right here, but it's way more than 2,000, right? It's I want to say it's like 8,000 a month. We can reduce the child being in foster care on average by 10 months if they have a CASA advocate. There can't be a greater cause than like helping our young people like have a chance, because that is the circle that gets us in problems too down the line. When these people become members of society, we need to get them to be functioning members of society. So I love the idea of continuing conversations like these. But Eli,
I was curious. John Ray started to pose a question earlier about the social safety net, and it's a term that's changed dramatically every decade, pretty much, in American history. And I was curious what you all see as the role of the government in providing a social safety net, where it could expand to, or where you see the bare minimums at, and what the purpose of that social safety net might be, in your minds.
Oh wow. That's
deep.
That is deep.
That's
a good question.
You're talking about some philosophical,
I think that's a different ideological debate that underlies every piece of policy. Is what do you think the government's role is?
Because when you talk about kids with school lunches, it's almost like a joke to say, if you don't support kids with school lunches, where does the social safety net start?
Well, but then you parallel that with vouchers, and that's its own. That has no evidence of benefit for educational outcomes, but food does. But we're willing to spend, which he said $144 million. That's the joke fiscal note they put on that bill. But it's more like it's going to creep up to $1 billion a year, easy, really quickly.
I'm just curious because I could see a conservative response of saying you want to prepare people for the workforce so they come out educated and ready to, contribute to society.
I mean, that's very, very important. That's very important.
But I come from a very conservative family and a very conservative district, and I'm never going to be in the thought or in the thinking that government's going to do anything better than the private sector. Okay. That being said, I know we have an obligation to educate our students and so forth, but I'm never going to be for growing government. Mm-hmm. Never going to support growing government. And anytime we grow government, it's more taxes.
But in something like this,
and my friend here, and I don't want to bring politics into it, and I was hoping we would keep politics out of it, but my friend across the table mentioned a couple of things that we passed to help Tennesseans and help businesses, but to be honest with you, if we want to call a spade here tonight, the last 4 years of Bidenomics, it's put a struggle on Tennessee families more than anything has.
But back to kids.
But
we know the price of food. What's went up?
Well, I think it's a fair argument about, and you kind of started hitting on this, was if we spend $1 today, what does that save us down the road? And it gets back to a kind of a state fiscal thing, because if we know that if better educational outcomes with kids, hunger impacts academics, behavioral, attendance issues. Those are the things that directly result in kids dropping out of school.
Right.
Direct result. And so those kids drop out of school, what's going to happen? They're going to go to prison. Mm-hmm. They're going to be on welfare.
They're going to be on the street.
They're going to be on the street. That's going to cost our state more money.
They're not learning by third or fourth grade. If you're not reading, you can project
So
what that looks like.
the question is, do we want to spend, let's say, $250 million now to feed these kids, to check these boxes with an undisputed variable? How much is that going to save us down the road? And that is something I think is not partisan at all. I mean, that's a fiscally responsible conversation to have. And I don't know what that number is.
Right.
But I know, I can guarantee you, higher graduation rates mean less cost down the road for prison, for
Absolutely.
welfare, what have you. So it's just, we've got to break this cycle somehow. And the reason I keep pushing this is it's an undisputed variable that has a positive impact.
And
so why would you not put money behind it?
And would that be helpful? Like if you, and again, I know that you're not sitting on, education, Todd. Maybe you're sitting on education. But regardless, on the budget side of it, do you think that would be helpful for like a budget? If there were, these have to be clear stats, right? Like someone who is food insecure, follow their trajectory to see what their graduation rate is. I don't know what the best metric is, but let's say that we were following that one and you could prove it and it shows what the cost. It was going to be a little fuzzy, right? Because it's going to be a little attenuated, but would that be persuasive, do you think, to people to say, look, this person in all likelihood would do, this much better, thereby reducing the cost. So if we put this in now, just like the cost example, if we invest $2,000 now, we can save, $80,000 with this child over the next, 4 or 5 years or whatever. Is that persuasive evidence to have, or is it because the money is in the current year? But I don't know. When we talk about, for example, the franchise tax, the reason that would be an argument similar to this of saying, yeah, okay, we're going to lose money now, but we think we're going to make up for it in the future. So we use that. Would that be persuasive here in the similar manner?
And a very, very little knowledge about Title I and the USDA and how much it pays and how much it gets. And I look at this fiscal note of $747,000, and John Ray says it's not that much, and I'll believe what he says to me. And so you look at 8 states that's already done this in the country. So I think to get your bill in posture, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to go to that committee and say, look, Title I is this much money. This is what Title I gives the state of Tennessee for the children's lunch programs and the breakfast. This is not going to cost us $747 million. We need to take into account that we'll have everybody fill out a form. And the federal government is 130. Is that what they do for the Title I?
Can you break it?
Percentage?
Do you got the numbers? Can you break it down as how much the federal government's paying for lunch, how much the state's paying for the free lunches? Do you know offhand?
Well, I know how much the federal government pays. I don't know how many kids are participating in the program this year.
Right.
If you look historically, you have to
look at it, yeah.
But one other thing that goes along with this, and we can sit here and pick it all day. Like I said, none of us want to see a kid go to school hungry or leave school hungry. But it's a breakdown of the family too. It's the single moms that's working 2 jobs, or the dad that's raising 2 kids at home. Mom, it's a number of things that contribute to a child going hungry. But it's a problem.
Kids can't fix that though. That's the real problem.
What's that?
So the kids can't fix that.
The kids can't really fix nothing.
But they're getting blamed and punished for it. And if we don't want them to be that parent in the next generation, there has to be
because it floats
something
that way.
And we're getting punished for it. I think we all would agree that when that child goes up and does not become a functioning member of society, there are of course exceptions, but we're all getting our children are getting punished for it because they're having to care for them. Did you have? I was going to take us home here, but do you have any?
We're saying, I think the overlap that I hear from what you are saying is like you're saying, kind of, Todd, that you do believe in sort of when you're a legislator and you're voting on something, you do care about cause and effect. And you sort of said you have a core belief that private sector does a lot of things better than the government. I think there's a lot of people who think that, but with school lunches it doesn't, because it doesn't do that. There's no private sector trying to,
No consistent private.
Yeah, there's no private sector until some billionaire creates a Tennessee food fund that's going to step in and fill this gap. We don't really have a private sector. The overlap that I hear though is you saying you do really believe in cause and effect, and having data around these things that we're talking about is really helpful, right? So if you believe that like cutting taxes is maybe in the short term is bad for Tennessee, but it's going to grow the state's economy, we're going to make it up. You can look at that data and have a reasonable conversation about it. I think this is the same thing. So I think what I really hear is, if we got two different options to vote on, and we have great compelling data around one path, and we don't have hardly any data about this path, but there's just sort of there's lobbyists behind it, there's money behind it, there's ideological, political momentum behind it. That one of the things we could do better as a state is look more at the data and that cause and effect link. And I hear you actually saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always need to look at the data, but we also got to keep in mind the cost too. I mean, but this is a tough one. I mean,
it's going to be tough.
This is absolute tough
3
situation.
years it's been tough.
Yeah.
At the federal level, you've got the Congressional Budget Office that scores bills and says this is how much this is going to cost, and there's some different agencies that do that. How does that done in Tennessee, and how do we know
There's a fiscal review.
And who does that?
Fiscal Review Committee.
Well, that's a good.
But the thing about it is, in what you said today, in what you said, we have something to think about.
Yeah.
We have something to research.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I don't sit on the education committee, but now I'm interested. I've talked to my children. I'm interested in what John Ray is saying here, but I have to research that out.
Yeah.
And to research that out, there's a barrier he's got to cross to get this bill through education.
I think he knows that.
And it's a huge barrier, but smart as he is, he could probably pull this thing off somehow.
No pressure.
This guy's going to have a
He needs to be in the speaker's office.
Let me tell you something good. I'm telling you, when it comes out of education, I'm signing on to the bill.
Did you guys was this helpful? Did you find this I don't know, different?
Well, it's good across. To get with me with these
of course
guys.
it's good.
It's good.
I didn't know you were this. Watching you on the floor and in committee, I would not have guessed you were this beloved. To be honest with.
Oh, he's not on.
We don't. It's when he's not on the floor. Is when he is.
No, I think people will be surprised how many of us have cordial relationships. But but to your point, I think that I think this doesn't happen often enough.
Yeah.
So y'all deserve credit for that. And it changed. When I first started working around state government back in the early 2000s, it was a different environment. Healthier in some ways and not healthier in others. But it was a lot more collegial. It was a lot more people going out having dinner, really spending time talking, knowing each other's families and things like that. And that doesn't happen as much today. Mm-hmm. Some of it's a building in which we work now is more kind of everybody's on an island, whereas it used to be everybody in suites and you had to pass everybody down there at the T and
sharing
Plaza.
offices and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think the conversations, like I said, are so important, and just we're going to agree to disagree a lot of times. And, take it. I think a lot of people take it too personally, and just having a difference of opinion. But I think it's healthy. I think it's always a good thing. Even if you don't come to an agreement at the end of the day, at least you talked. Yeah. And you know each other.
Yeah.
That's missing, I will say, in our
That is
body.
missing.
Well, that's what, after spending just some time down there last session, it just really spoke to me, and I really enjoy these conversations and I will say, I think that in Nashville, with the news and a lot of the reporting, I think we need to this is this is Angie's position, a little bit more of a positive message of like collaboration. I mean, you guys are to be commended for being here tonight. Quite frankly, you don't have to be here. I mean, John Ray puts his bill up. No one has to second it. I mean, it made it through, it looked like one committee to me last time. Maybe I'm wrong, but didn't even get a second. Todd, you had a bill like that. You and Afton had a bill like that. Didn't even
like that.
Didn't even get a second. I think
been there yet.
this is
well
my,
alive.
it's like you guys are
I can help you.
you guys are elected by the people as a constituent. I think it's sad when somebody puts this much thought, energy, heart behind something. This is something to me, and I think to a lot of people, that should make it through several committees. Does it get killed, in budget? Okay, it gets killed and we try again. But does it get killed in the first committee? Like, I think that there's something to be thought about there. But I want to commend you guys because, again, you guys don't have to be here. You don't have to do anything. We've seen it before, and so having the conversation shows that you care.
We do care. We do care.
Yeah, and we respect. I
absolutely.
respect this guy right here totally.
Well, I'm going to make you
there.
end with a one-word barometer question, or one-word barometer of how you feel now.
I think hopeful. I think it's good to hear more common ground than you'd maybe expect. It's not always a food fight, which is definitely
Yeah.
Well, there's no food fight.
Yeah. There's some in there.
Some in there.
I would think my word now would be satisfying. Like John Ray said, Todd knows that if we, we're elected. There's 99 of us. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. It doesn't really matter at this point in life. It's just that we have a job to do for our constituents of Tennessee and for this great state. And I think this is like he said, I think we need to do more of this camaraderie.
Yeah.
I need to go into John Ray's office and just say, hey, what's happening? He needs to come into Todd's office and say, hey, man, what's happening today?
So Todd, if I was a young whippersnapper on the Republican side, I would be like, look, this is where Tennessee ranks in the country as far as education.
Oh, we're well aware, believe me.
And how are we going to move that up? How are we going to overtake
Well
our southern state neighbors? We're gonna pass this food bill.
Hey,
That's going to move the needle.
Todd, what's your one word?
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that John Ray
that's a
came
good one.
tonight,
Yeah.
spoke
Yeah.
on his bill, and we give him more than 3 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it was, for him to speak tonight. So
You know what? I'll donate some money for extra biscuit for Todd.
That's a fiscal notice.
And Ron, John.
I'll Venmo you. You never know when that biscuit gets Tennesseans a little bit more food. So you just never know.
Biscuit for Todd gets a kid fed.
That's right. John Ray, what about you?
Appreciative.
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation. These guys don't, they don't live here. I live 10 minutes away. They live a long way away. I appreciate y'all coming up here and having this conversation.
It's an honor.
Kind of an unknown atmosphere for all of us.
Yeah.
So I think it's courageous.
Me too.
A lot of y'all's colleagues wouldn't do it probably.
Yeah, and I'm also grateful because the spirit of bipartisanship that we hope has more conversations like this along the way. But again, you guys are kind of guinea pigs, and I appreciate your trust in me because I want to keep it going, and I know that positivity is the only way that we can do this.
John Ray, good to see you, buddy.
Good
to see you.
This episode is brought to you by Lachlan Insurance Advisors, a locally owned and operated insurance agency in Nashville. Lachlan Insurance Advisors has a team of insurance agents and advisors licensed in personal and commercial lines. Lachlan is dedicated to providing objective advice and custom coverage options from an array of curated industry-leading carriers. To learn more about Lachlan Insurance Advisors, get free quotes for home, including short-term rental properties, auto, life, or commercial insurance, or to review your current insurance coverage, call them today at 615-266-0246 or visit them online at heylachlan.com.